Let's just talk a little bit more about functions before we head on to the topics for this week. So we're finishing up with quiz 3D here. You do have quizzes due this week. Make sure you check the course outline, you check the due dates, and you know which quizzes are coming up and when they are due. And one more reminder that you should have these notes printed, and if not, you're writing all this down so that you have a set of notes to study from. So one of the things you may be asked to do is evaluate a function given a graph. So this is a graph of a function. Remember, if we're using that vertical line test, any vertical line we draw intersects the graph exactly once, so we know this is a function. And we're asked to find the f of -2. Remember that this is our x value. So we're looking at the place where x is -2. The f of -2 occurs at this place of intersection, and we can see that the f of -2 equals 2. What about the f of 0? The f of 0 tells us to look where x is equal to 0. Find that point of intersection on the graph. And we see that y, or the f of 0, equals 3. Pause your video and find the f of 6. Again, x equals 6. And when x equals 6, y, or the f of 6, equals 0. The questions at the bottom here are a little bit different. We're told that the f of x equals 1. That's telling me that y equals 1. We want to know what x equals. So when y equals 1, we're here. What is the value of x? Well, I hope you can see that there are two values of x. X equals 5 and x equals -4. Let's get rid of some of this and do the next one. The f of x equals 0. So again, we're being told that y equals 0. We want to find our values for x. When y is 0, we know we're here. Again, there are two values of x. X equals 6 and x equals -6. Pause your video and find x when the f of x equals 4. Y equals 4 here. We have only one point. X equals 2. Just a reminder that if you want to practice these kinds of questions, you can go into Pearson and find the homework assignments for quiz 3D. We also talked last week about graphing lines using the slope-intercept form. So let's run through a quick review of that. Given y equals -3x plus 2, which point do we know? We know the y-intercept. X equals 0, y equals 2. We know the slope, -3. What does that tell us about the line? It tells us it's moving down and to the right. And remember, we had to find one other point besides that y-intercept. I suggested using x equals the denominator of the slope. So the first thing we always said to graph was the y-intercept, where y is equal to 2. The second thing was to find a point letting x equal the denominator of the slope, which in this case is 1. -3 times 1 plus 2 equals -1. So we have a point at 1, -1. That does give us a negative slope. You can check finding a third point if you like. Pause your video, graph question 2. The first point you plotted was the y-intercept, or b, at -3. Next, you let x equal the denominator of the slope. So we have a point at x equals 2, y equals -2. We knew this line would be going up and to the right because we had a positive slope. We're also going to do a quick review of exponents and powers because we're going to start applying these to our polynomials. Remember in this example that 5 is the base, 3 is the exponent. The exponent 3 tells us to multiply the base by itself 3 times. Exponential notation always represents repeated multiplication. So those of you attempt to do 5 times 3, remember, you're not repeating your multiplication there. It has to be 5 times 5 times 5. The base multiplies itself. Wow, I didn't spell multiplication right there, did I? There we go. So we'll stop here. Let's evaluate these. Pause your video, find the answer for those first 4. I hope you found these answers. Just a quick note about 0.3 cubed. I hope you know how to multiply decimals. You first of all ignore the decimals, and we have 3 times 3 times 3, which gives us 27. But then you add up the decimal places, we'll have 3 decimal places in our answer. So I hope you know that. Pause your video again, try the next 4. If I was verifying your test or your final exam with you, this is what I would be looking for, the difference between these brackets and exponents kinds of questions. The first 2 questions, the 3 is outside the bracket, the 4 is outside the bracket, so it applies to everything inside. We have an odd number of negative signs, our answer is negative. In the next one, an even number of negative signs, our answer is positive. In the last 2, there's always an odd number of negative signs. So the answer, the product, is always negative. But I would want to see that explanation from you if I asked you to verify an answer. All right, 8 more questions. Pause your video, see what you can do with these. Let's look at the first 4. Did you get those answers? And this one, the 4 only applies to the 2. So our product is negative 16/3. Pause your video, finish these up. I hope you were able to answer these correctly. Let's just talk about a couple of things here. We have an even exponent, so we know the answer will be positive. We have an odd exponent, so we know the answer will be negative. And in the last one, when you were multiplying -4 times 4 times 4 times 4, it might be easier to multiply 16 times 16. And if you have to use long multiplication to answer that question, then do it. You're not allowed to use calculators. So if you need that practice, if you need that time, please take it.